This episode is brought to you by Monogram. Welcome to the Design Dash podcast, your guide to designing a life you love. Join us as we explore the keys to living the life you want without compromise. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Design Dash podcast. I am your co-host, Melissa Grove, and I'm here with my co-host, Lori Umansky, and we are here with our wonderful guest today. I'm really excited. I love it when we have marketing and branding experts on because I feel like I can finally talk about something with some level of experience and expertise. So I want to welcome our guest, Callie Edwards. She is the creative force behind June Mango Design. Callie hails from a rich background in both fine art and web design from the Art Institute of Chicago, my old hometown. And she is the founder of June Mango. She founded it to elevate and support healers, helpers, and holistic brands with distinctive branding and web design. She is known for their Go Live in 5 process, which sounds super cool. I really hope we get to talk about this, where June Mango crafts and launches websites in just 5 days. So for anybody who's ever launched a website, you know that is miraculous. So I hope that we can touch on that a little bit. And Callie, it's wonderful to have you here.
I'm so excited I'm so excited to chat with you guys.
All right, well, let's get started. So let's just talk about June Mango for a second. When we are, most of our listeners, they're going to be interior designers, and branding is such a huge part of it because this is such a visual industry. What are some, maybe like some trends that you're seeing in branding right now, or maybe some challenges that some of your clients are seeing?
I think the trends are probably the same things you're seeing, where people do tend to, I will say, maybe stepping back, I try to not be on trend in branding because you want your brand to have last sort of a lifetime, so to speak. And of course you can rebrand, but a brand should be timeless and it should speak to who you are and who your clients are, and therefore maybe not be so trendy. It should be more aligned with sort of what you're doing for your clients, so that it feels like a little bit of like a visual handshake for them. And so while there are always trends, just like there are always trends in interior design, it doesn't mean that you have to jump on the bandwagon of every single trend, right? Especially if you want something that is a timeless design that lasts for a while. So,
and that's a good thing to know, because I get that itch, like it's been 2 or 3 years after we've redesigned our website and I'm like, I want to incorporate this that can seem trendy or something like that. And maybe that's not the way to look at it.
I think it can come into a website. Feels to me like I always say a website is a living, breathing thing. So, we'll launch a website and then I think people feel like, they're like dusting their hands off, like we did it, we're done. And now we never have to touch it again. And that's just not the case. I mean, it's done in the sense that it is done and it's up and it's running and, you have like the nuts and bolts and everything is there, but you can always be tweaking your website. You can always add blogs. You can always add content. So I think that is a little different than your logo and your brand should feel consistent because that is how people get to know you. So again, imagine if Nike was rebranding all the time. You'd be like, well, is this Nike? Like, what is this? What am I looking at now? I don't even know like what these shoes are. So the branding needs to stay consistent, but then you have all the things that fall under the branding. And that's where you can kind of play around with trends. So especially if you have a blog or you're on Instagram or you want to play with like a TikTok type of, video or reel or something, there's all kinds of ways to bring in fun, trendy elements that still are aligned underneath the umbrella of your brand.
Melissa, does this make you want to just completely redo our website?
Well, no, because I also I want to, but then you play it through, right? And you think, but then I have to change this and I have to change that.
It's so painful.
I'm not really wanting to change all of that. I think if anything, I want to just do a little refresh, And I think sometimes too, you just see something so often. And I think, okay, well, I want it to be a little bit different. Or it's the comparison game, which I know is terrible. The thief of joy, all of that. You've got to stop doing it. But anytime I see another designer, they don't even have to be a competitor. It may not even be a designer. It just may be a really cool website with some really cool stuff. I'm thinking, kind of wish that were mine a little bit.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. We're not going down that rabbit hole, but like Melissa said earlier, 5 days to a website sounds like a dream because it is so much work. Like and I don't even do the bulk of the work. Like Melissa and her team if we redesign or redo our website, like that really falls on marketing shoulders. And it is a daunting task. So how in the world are you making this happen in 5 days? I'm so intrigued by that.
Well, I feel like, there's a process, of course, but I do think that there's a little bit of a personality trait where I don't know what it is, but I tend to do things more quickly than other people. I have a little saying on my website, which feels true, which is it's kind of like your type A friend married your like very artsy friend and they had a business baby. And that's basically who I am. So I'm a little over here on the type A side with, I love a system and a process. And I'm also very creative and very right brained and obviously a designer too. So that's part of it. Part of it's just me. But also, there is this really clear process and it took me a couple of years to really like nail it down, but now I've been doing it for like 13 years or something. And when I started doing this, it came out of this same place where I was working before at a PR firm and as an art director, and we were doing a lot of websites for a lot of really big clients. And there were websites that were taking a year and a half, 2 years.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, this is ridiculous. It's a waste
that blows my mind.
It's a waste of money on their part. It's a waste of time on our part. Nobody's winning in that scenario. So I just thought when I was starting my own business, I just thought there has to be a better way. I didn't mean to go all the way from a year and a half to a week necessarily, but again, that just is what worked for me. And I realized that I can do that in 5 days. So part of it is, I always have having people gather. The hardest part is getting content together. As I'm sure you know, writing copy is very difficult. Making sure you just have everything you need and all of these assets that go into the website, that happens beforehand. And there's time built in so that, the client can think through, okay, what do I need to take photos of my studio? Do I need to go take photos of my practice? Do I need to get new headshots? Do I need to update my bio? Do I need to, whatever the thing, do I need to rebrand? Do I need to do any of these things? So that's happening beforehand, and we can sort of help people think through, what does that look like? What do you need? What needs to be refreshed? What do you have that you can keep? So, and while that's included in the process, it's honestly happening mostly on their end because it tends to be, unless we're doing copywriting or something or branding for them. But so it gives them some time to think through that stuff beforehand. So then when you set a deadline, which is, okay, this is the week we're starting, and they have to have everything in hand by that week. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. So you have to have everything ready to go. And then I go through my, busy week process of putting it all together during that week. And then we go through revisions and they're pretty much ready to go by Friday. So but I feel like the biggest part of it and the biggest bottleneck is actually what happens before the week starts.
Yeah. Like all the heavy lifting is happening. Not that there's not heavy lifting during that 5 days, obviously, but the heavy lifting for the client is happening in that time leading up to turning over all the assets. I would need a solid freaking 8 weeks to get all that stuff together easily. So, okay, maybe a month. If Melissa's actually like driving the project, probably a month. I'm really curious, because you said like I went from this big agency and now it's me. So I don't know. I think staying small is often like really undervalued in a world that is glorifying this idea of getting big and bigger is better and scaling. So how do you define success in your own business? And what advice do you have for female entrepreneurs that want to grow really intentionally while staying aligned to their values?
Yeah, I think I think there's this term called a micro business even. So we have small businesses and then we have micro businesses. And I tend to think of myself as a micro business. And it's actually been a really intentional choice for me. That there's a lot of, and then that sort of plays into your question about success, because I think you have to define what success means to you before you think through what is the goal and the growth for my business that I want to see. So for me, success looks like not having to work 40 hours a week. It looks like being able to pick up my kids from school and be with them after school. And I have 2 pickups right now because I have kids in 2 different schools and they're at different times of day. So being able to do that and know that I can do that. My kids had a snow day yesterday, knowing that I don't have to feel like my brain is scrambled because I suddenly have to drop everything and hang out with these kiddos in the snow. That feels like I've really set up a successful business that continues to run efficiently while my life can run alongside it. And possibly I would even say my life is sort of maybe even taking precedent in a lot of ways. So, and that again is something that I set up very intentionally, and decided to keep it small. And not that you can't be really huge and take off days and play in the snow with your kids. That can totally work too. But I also felt like the people that I want to work with don't have, you know, super, super large budgets necessarily. And I feel much more fulfilled working with, like you said in the intro, the healers and the helpers is what I call them, but people who are serving other people. They have served me in many ways. So I feel like that's the way that I want to give back. So feeling like I'm really helping them and that feels really aligned with my values, that also feels like success for me and that they feel like we're a good match. So that's sort of what drives me to continue growing, but it's not growth from like a numbers perspective. It's sort of more like an internal growth, like like life's purpose sort of growth. And that's kind of how I set up my business personally.
I love that. We were just having this conversation in we have the Design Dash community, which is a group of interior design business owners, and we all come together and have coffee chat, every other week, and we just hang out and chat about whatever's top of mind. And we were talking about growth this morning, and it's really interesting because it's kind of split. It's like some of us love this slow burn type of growth where it's really intentional and we're prioritizing family right now. So we may not be taking on a ton of clients and trying to scale to a 10-person firm and all of these things, but it's very intentional. And it's about balance. And then there's some of us that take out a loan and we invest in our business up front because we want this bigger firm. So I like hearing your why. And I think that's so important to consider.
And I think it's almost similar to branding or websites in that way, in which it's seasonal, right? So in this season of my life, that is what it feels like I need. And it feels really good for me. So before I had kids, I was like working tons of hours and really growing the business. And that also felt really good for me at that time. So, and when my kids are a little older, I may, bring on more people. I have had a few employees in the past and I have one now, but I may decide, actually, I would like to have a small studio with 5 people working for June Mingo, and then that can grow in its own way. So I think it can shift and change. And, they always say the only thing that's constant is change. And if we can just sort of lean into that, then we don't have to feel like we have all the answers right now and this is the way it's always going to be. And even if you're trying to grow, right? Like you haven't gotten there yet, but the yet is the most important word in that sentence.
So are you a big planner? Like, do you sit down and you're just like, okay, like you sat down with intention, this is the kind of business that I want to build like for now. And is that something that you also take into branding with your clients? Like, you have to be really thoughtful about what do you really want?
I'm much more intentional and much more of a planner with my clients. I used to be a much bigger planner for myself too, but I find that the chaos of motherhood is such that you tend to have to roll with the punches a bit and kind of, test and change. So I used to have more, 2-year, 5-year goals. And now I feel like I just feel good where I'm at and that feels good enough. And we'll see what it feels like next month, next week, the next day. But I definitely do a lot of intentional. What I want to do is bring a lot of intention to the forefront of what my clients are thinking through. So the way that I do branding is possibly a little different from others where it's not just about the visuals. It's very much about who is your ideal client? What is, your purpose in serving them? What makes you different from anyone else who might work with you? And we're going to, once I get that kind of like foundational information, I'm using that actually to kind of pull through into the visuals. And I'm also typically not designing for necessarily what what my client wants in terms of the visuals, if that makes any sense. So in other words, your favorite color might be purple, but that might not make any sense for the particular types of clients that you want to work with. So while I may keep that in mind and it's helpful to know, we might go in a completely different direction than what you would quote unquote want or what you like. Because again, what I'm trying to do is make it match and attract your dream customer, basically. And that is, again, very intentional.
Yeah. And that's a big challenge, though, too. We've talked in our community a little bit about, I want to be my authentic self in my branding, but I'm not sure if my client will jive with that. I'm not sure if my client might like, even, it could be colors, but it could even be personal style, especially with talking with interior designers. You may want to work with clients of any style, and that can be a challenge for them. I mean, do you see that a lot in branding, just kind of that uncertainty of, I don't even know where to go because I don't know if I can bring my whole self, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it probably comes from like a deeper psychological place that we're all, and maybe this is sort of a issue more with women than men, I would say.
Yeah, I agree.
Where we're trying to sort of bring through ourselves and we don't feel like we are accepted wholly there. But I think, we were talking before we got on a little bit about niching, and I think that there is nothing more important than niching for your brand. You will attract more people counterintuitively when you niche down. The more niche you are, the more customers you will attract because you will be a better fit for them. And so then you are more likely to obviously have a great interaction and a great, project, and they're going to love you and they're going to spread the word to their friends. And even again, just coming back to branding, people will see this brand and instead of feeling like it will connect in such a more profound way because it is so specific. And so then it won't connect with some people, and that's okay. And I know that feels scary. And I think that's why people get a little afraid of niching and they feel like, oh, I don't want to exclude potential clients or customers who, I might want to work with, but aren't like totally in this exact wheelhouse. But I've always found that while niching does bring more of a specific subset of people, you will still get some people outside of that niche. I tend to work with mostly therapists and nutritionists and acupuncturists. And then occasionally I work with interior designers, it's not exactly the same, but it's not the same either. Like there's that service offering is still an offering of helping people in a specific way. It's through design. It's just not through like acupuncture needles. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, let's go back maybe to the basics to some of our listeners who are thinking, well, what is niching? Maybe explain that a little bit to them.
So niching is essentially narrowing in on who you are and who you want to work with. So again, as using myself as an example, positioning is maybe even a sort of better word for it. So it's how you're positioning yourself in your business. So I'm positioning myself in my business as a branding and web designer who works with healers and helpers. And so that excludes like if you were a restaurant, then, I might not be the perfect fit. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't do a great design. I probably would nail a menu design, right? But that's not what my niche is. And even though that would be kind of a fun project, again, going back to what we were saying before with sort of what I feel like my own sense of purpose is in the work that I'm doing and my own intentions of what I want to do with this business that I'm running, it would make me feel more fulfilled to help somebody with a website who is helping someone else rather than to design a menu, even though that might be a fun project. But ultimately where I want to be and the people I want to work with are this very narrow subset. So niching is kind of narrowing in, and then narrowing in again, and then maybe narrowing in again, and kind of figuring out who is it that I want to serve in this very specific, small sort of subset of my potential clients.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that has to be your niche forever, right? You might find that within your niche, there's something really, really close to that client that then when you're ready, you can expand outward too. So you're not really keeping yourself in. I mean, if you want to, and it's successful for you, I think that's great, but it's still dynamic, right? Your business grows and changes as you want it to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's true of anything all the time. I always say test and change because you absolutely can test it and then change it if it's not working. And both not working, from the numbers perspective, number of inquiries, right? You can see that data and it's not working, or maybe it's just not working for you personally. You don't love working with that particular type of client. That type of project is taking too long. It's whatever it is, you can kind of see what works and then obviously rearrange it.
I think it's really important to talk about that because, and this may be, again, more of a trait of women, but I think we need the permission to pivot if we want to. Like, we can change, we can evolve. And just because we committed to something doesn't mean we have to stick with it forever. Like, if it's and that's my big thing this year, we've talked about, if it's no longer serving me, I'm letting it go, because I don't know, I feel like there's something better out there for you if you can let things go. In our community, there are women that are launching businesses, that are scaling businesses, that may be scaling back, or just generally at a pivot point. So I think that, like, you coming from the agency world to launching June Mango could be really interesting to them. So, like, maybe just some lessons that you've learned making that change, and also what spurred that change. Like, how did you have the confidence to leave something like the agency world to start your own thing?
We'd like to thank our good friends at Monogram Appliances. We've partnered with Monogram for over a decade with our design firm, Laura Yu Design Collective, and we're so happy to partner with them in producing the Design Dash podcast. Monogram sources the highest quality materials for their appliances, from commercial grade stainless steel to unscratchable sapphire glass. Monogram ensures lasting beauty and unmatchable quality for your luxury kitchen. And not only that, but they have an amazing team who we love working with, and we know you will too. So thanks, Monogram.
That's a good question. What you were saying initially made me think of the phrase, if you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And I find that so helpful because, it's easy to think, oh, well, if I say no to this opportunity, then I'm really like turning this opportunity down. But if you're saying no to an opportunity, you're ultimately just making space in your life, and that space can then be filled with something else. And so maybe that means it gets filled with time off, and that maybe doesn't directly benefit your business, but then again, maybe it does. So it's sort of just like a reframe of how we're perceiving the decisions that we're making in our business. But for me, I was at this agency, and while it was perfectly lovely, it was also a little bit boring. The projects were a little bit boring, and I felt I'm in DC, so it was sort of like, as a creative in DC, where you're in this very wonky, political world, we were doing a lot of projects that were necessary, but I didn't feel like the artist in me was like, I just want to create like amazing things. So I didn't feel like I was really able to kind of spread my wings there, on top of what I said before, which is that these projects were taking forever. And I also it was a little bit of a boys club in this particular agency. And I was like, I just don't fit here, and I don't want to fit here. So it felt like, and I'm very much somebody who I'm clearly meant to run a business because I like making my own rules and I like having all of my own ideas. So that felt like a no-brainer for me. So I decided to leave, and then I didn't immediately find my footing either. I wasn't like, and now I'm making tons of cash and I'm working with the healers and the helpers and all the things, and it's great. I started by doing a lot more wedding oriented things. So I was doing stationery and stuff like that, which was fun, but also a little tricky. And then I was doing websites also. And that was when I eventually came up with the Go Live in 5 process. Cause I was like, I just think, there's these platforms out there that make it so much easier, where it's not like you're coding this website from the ground up anymore. I'm pretty sure I can take this platform and really customize it, and it just won't take that long. And then that's what I did. And then over time, I kind of refined who the clients were just by, again, testing and changing. Do I like working with this type of client? Do I like doing this type of project? Even with the Go Live in 5 process, it was sort of like, do I like launching on a Friday and feeling really stressed because it's 6 p.m. and we haven't launched yet? And everybody's like, we must launch because it's Friday. So I changed that a little bit to say, now I include 3 hours for the whole month following the Go Live week. where they have any time to make changes and small edits. And it's not stressful, but it's a fast week. And so I don't want anyone to feel like, oh my God, I didn't get everything done and now I have no chance to do it ever again. The last thing I want to do is put more stress on a project. It's just not, it's web design. It's not rocket science. It's okay. Like everything's fine. So
it's all fine. Exactly.
It's all fine.
I mean, the same with interior design.
Yes.
It is not brain surgery. We are all fine. It's okay.
Exactly. So I decided to add that in. That was a test and change thing for me too. So obviously it took, just like with anything, we don't just like come out knowing all the things and what to do and what's going to work and what's not. But after doing it for many years, I've now kind of figured out the things that work best for me and work best for my clients too.
Did you have a mentor starting out, or even like when you were going to start your business or go out on your own? Did you have someone?
I didn't really have a person, but I did listen to Being Boss, which they no longer have a podcast. But it was two ladies, Emily Thompson and Kathleen Shannon, and they both own their own business. And they were very much running these creative businesses, and they made a podcast about it. And I just devoured that podcast and listened to everything that they were teaching me. And I am so grateful to them. And now I know them personally after many years of just following them. And they were great. So it wasn't necessarily that somebody came and sort of taught me everything, but I definitely did not do it all by myself. I didn't have all the answers for sure.
Well, it's good that you listened to that podcast. I mean, Kathleen Shannon, I feel like she was on our podcast. This would have been back in November. She's Braid Creative.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I was like, how does that name sound so familiar? Yes. Okay, awesome.
Yes, Braid Creative, her and Tara, they're amazing. Their branding process is incredible. But yes, so they had already been, I think they had been, when I was starting my business, they had been in business for maybe 5 years, something like that. So they had enough experience under their belt to know all the things I didn't know.
But isn't it funny though? Because like once you hit 5 years as an entrepreneur, you're still like, I don't know a damn thing. Like I'm 5 years in and I still don't know.
It definitely feels like that in some ways because things keep coming up, right? And I think now I will say 10 years in, I feel like, okay, I have a pretty good handle on everything. But then I don't know, something happens and you start to get itchy and you're like, do I want to do other things? Do I want to, it's like I don't know if you guys feel this way anyway, but as a creative.
Yes.
I'm like,
I can really relate to like the type A, but also the creative. And I feel like that's kind of a dangerous combination, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. Because I've also done many things where I've sort of tried to launch small things within the umbrella of my business because I just get so excited about new ideas.
Yeah, you're like shiny object. That seems so much fun. Like what a great idea. How in the hell have I not made that work already?
Totally.
And then you start going down that path and you're like, that's why I didn't do that before.
Exactly. And I feel like a great example of that in the test and change. And then also just learning more about yourself and how you work. I've tried to launch many a digital project or digital product, and nothing has ever worked. I don't think I can do the one-to-many. It's just not something about the stars need to align for someone to be able to do that. And I don't have that skill set, but I am excellent one-on-one. That's just,
I think it's the runway though. I think it's a long runway, the one-to-many.
I guess that's true. Maybe I'm impatient. Probably
I build websites in a week. That it looks like, that looks so easy. I've done harder things. Of course I can do that.
People make it look so easy and it's just not. I mean, just like anything, it's consistency and time, right? So I don't know. The one-to-many it is the allure. It looks very sexy. That's gross. I hate that word, but whatever.
You hate the word sexy?
I don't. I love the word sexy, but in that context, it felt really creepy to me.
It's seductive. Yeah. It's like, ooh, come on over here.
That's what I'm looking for.
You can do this. You can.
Seductive.
It's.
Yeah. On that note, so now that you're an entrepreneur, you've had your own business for a long time. Would you ever go back to agency? Like, what's the best thing about having your own business and setting it up the way you have, like the way you've designed it?
I don't think I could ever go back. I know many people actually who have done that for the consistency of a paycheck. And there's many reasons to work in an agency. But again, I think it's a personality thing. I am much, 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 much better working for myself. I feel like I have the drive. I'm very disciplined. If something is not working, I will figure out a way to make it work or figure out something else that will. So I'm just not as motivated to work for someone else. It doesn't feel like the payoff matches the work for me personally. I think that there's a benefit to having security and all those things. And for whatever reason, I just don't care about security. So I don't need the benefits that the agency life brings. And I do find that I have just so much more freedom to help people and also feel fulfilled on my end creatively on my own.
Do you know your Enneagram type?
Yes, I am a 4.
Oh, that would make sense.
You're a 4 wing 3.
I'm not sure exactly what my wing is. I always get confused about the wings.
Okay.
But
You're a 4.
perhaps.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I have all the moods, and I'm the artist who has all the things to express.
Yeah. All right. That does make sense. I'm guessing that you're a wing 3.
But because
you're very self-motivated, and it sounds like, I don't know, do you like achieving things? I don't know.
Yeah. And then, but the wing 5 would be very cerebral, right? That's more like the book. You're into the books knowledge. And the learning. Yeah.
And I like that too. I don't know. And anyway, I just wondered if you knew. I figured you would know your Enneagram type.
I definitely know my Enneagram. I know my human design. I know all the things. Yes. Give me any sort of woo-woo personality test and I will be right there with it.
I love them. So what's next for you?
Well, in this season, like I was saying, I'm really just kind of focusing on, I don't know, just sort of keeping things going as they are. And that feels really fine. I don't feel like I'm in a season of growth. I'm very much in a season of growing my family rather than growing my business. And that feels like plenty of work, and that's okay. So while I'm still working a ton and really happy with all of the work that I'm doing and the people that I'm helping, I also feel like I'm spending a lot of time with my kiddos because my kids are 6 and almost 3. So they're still kind of young and they just need me in a way that they won't in a couple years, right? And then I can kind of reassess.
They're still going to need you. I have 12-year-old twins and they just need you in a different way.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I love that for you. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. I think that I feel good. I feel good about where we're at.
And you've designed it for yourself, like your life that way. So I love that. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Melissa, what you got?
I guess if we're going to leave our listeners on anything, you know, a lot of the designers in our community, they're either just getting started and they're emerging and they're just like, what is my brand? Or they've been in their business, you know, they're hitting that 5 to 7 year mark and they're like, I got to do something else. I got to refresh. What is one piece of advice that you would give them to just make them feel a little bit more confident on that journey?
I think that if they can really just like sit quietly for a bit, honestly, I know that sounds very woo-woo, but I'm here for it. So, you know, just kind of see if they can be as true to themselves as they possibly can and really listening to that inner voice that says, this is what feels good for me and this doesn't. And kind of following that in whatever direction it leads, which can feel a little scary. It's a bit like niching. It's a bit like saying no when you think you're supposed to say yes. So I just think if anyone, whether, and you know, this is true, I think for people who've been in business for 25 years, it's as long as we can kind of really listen to what's the truest truth of what's inside us, then that's going to lead us where we want to go, even if it seems like the craziest path ever. I think that just kind of following your gut in that way is always going to lead you where you want to go.
Is there an exercise that you'd recommend to like get to that point? Is there something, or is it just like, just sit with yourself and write in your journal? Or is there like I'm a process person too. So I love the woo woo, but give me a process to apply there. Like, is there something that you would recommend?
Yes. Well, so I will say the person, if you're looking for a guru in applying a process to a woo-woo idea, it's Martha Beck. I don't know if you're familiar with Martha Beck.
I'm not, actually.
She's like, they call her Oprah's life coach. She's incredible. She has a ton of books. One of her best books, I think, that has a lot of exercises in it that kind of helps you in this way is called Finding Your Own North Star. But some of the exercises she talks about are even sitting there and thinking through, like, she even says, like, imagining what it feels like in your body. So does this feel warm? Or does it feel cold? And sort of like getting used to that, or noticing what does your body do whenever you want to say no. For me, my shoulders kind of come in and I sort of get hunched when something feels like, oh, I really don't want to do that. But if it feels really good for me, like a great opportunity, I notice I do the opposite of that. And I kind of am like opening my chest. So those are very woo-woo things, but they're kind of like practical little things and everyone has something different. It might be like your eyes open bigger. You know what I mean? Like, it just depends. And then the other thing I would say is there is just something about sitting in the space and the silence. And so, a lot of artists talk about doing morning pages, which is where you just write in a journal in the morning. It doesn't have to be about anything at all. But I find that when I do that, I get these little tidbits of messages that were sort of there all along. And it's just like a little bit of clarity where you're like, oh, yeah. I mean, I think I knew that, but I kind of didn't know it until I saw it right here on the page.
I think that's from The Artist Way, right?
Yes, I think that's right.
Okay.
So things like that. But I would say if you want to do a deep dive, I would say Martha Beck is your girl. Yeah.
And you're paying attention to your somatic responses.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. I need to do this. So everybody look at your calendar right now, block out like 2 hours to like sit with yourself in silence, or with Martha Beck, or with Artist Way and morning pages. I like it. I need to do this.
And if you don't have 2 hours, because who does, 10 minutes.
Oh, see, I like to block out too. I need some time because I got to make my coffee. I got to get in the right mindset.
I just don't want to scare people away from doing it because they don't have 2 hours. I would rather someone do it for 10 minutes.
All about consistency. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. See, I need 2 hours just because I need my slow time. It's in my mornings. I need my slow morning. So that's what I'm going to do this. I need some morning pages in my life. All right, Melissa, anything else?
If anybody was wanting to find you and to connect with you, Callie, how can they do so?
So I'm at junemango.com, like June the month and mango the fruit, junemango.com. And then my Instagram, which is basically the only social media that I'm even occasionally on, is June Mango Studio. So that's where you can find me.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been really insightful and actionable too. So I appreciate that.
Yes, it was so lovely. It was so great to talk with you guys.
Thanks so much, Callie.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out our next podcast, coming live next week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. In the meantime, you can find us and more wonderful stories like these on DesignDash.com. And make sure to follow us at Design Dasher on Instagram and TikTok. Till next time.